For over 35 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
This is Jeff Probst.
I'm Kaylee Cuoco.
I'm Eli Roth.
This is Marlon Wayans.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin James, and this is The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
Welcome everybody to episode 2 of the reboot of The Producer's Guide, where we're trying to talk about not only what producers do, who they are, but how can we as a community, not just producers, help reinvigorate the business. And I could not think of a better person than Billy Ray, who I have known for beyond 30 years. He's an incredible talent, but he's so active in politics and in the guilds and in really caring about trying to bring this business to its most healthy. I do not believe that this business is by any means over. I do not believe the negativity that I hear in all of the media all the time. I am always, because I'm a producer, I am very, very optimistically insane in terms of my blind belief in my tilting at windmills in this business. And I feel like if we can just keep positive and trying to make stuff that resonates with us, then I think that we can get there. And I know that it's daunting when you hear the words, just make good stuff, because maybe our own insecurities maybe make us feel like, do I know how to make good stuff? I mean, what is good stuff? What I would sort of shift that to when you hear that is just make stuff that resonates with you, that you would want to see. Jerry Bruckheimer, who was one of my mentors, is constantly asked, what do you look for in a movie? And he always says the same thing. I look for a movie that I'd want to go to. And what's great about our community and the world at large is we all have different backgrounds and different cultures and different things that we love, especially now with social media. We're all exposed to so many things. If you can just focus on the stuff you're passionate about and work very hard and just tilt at those windmills, I honestly believe we can make this business robust and healthy again. Please enjoy my very deep emotional conversation with Billy Ray as we try to parse this out and figure out what we can all do together as next steps of moving forward in our business. All right, I'm here with Billy Ray, an Academy Award nominated filmmaker behind such films as Shattered Glass, The Hunger Games, Richard Jewell, Captain Phillips, the list goes on, and perhaps the most viewed thing in history, the AMC intro with Nicole Kidman, which is, I think, single-handedly kind of the greatest thing that is in any pre-show of any movie.
Thank you.
And the thing about Billy is he brings incomparable research and moral complexity and unflinching craftsmanship to everything he touches, including a podcast that I had the good fortune of co-hosting with you for a little bit called Strike Talk. And you know what's amazing, Billy, is we did it. Like post-strike, we did it. We fixed it all. Post-strike talk, I think all the problems have gone away. We've sort of fixed them, right?
Yeah. I'm uncomfortable not doing an 8-minute intro before we speak.
Listen, if you want to write one and just put it in front of this, we absolutely can.
No,
I would
that's
love
okay.
it. I would love it. And the thing that you are so great at is really kind of breaking down the problem, explaining it from your point of view, and then I want to spend some time trying to figure out what solutions are there. What can we do to try and combat some of these issues that we're being presented with on a daily basis? The first piece I want to talk about is post-strike, because we did this podcast called Strike Talk. And everybody went on strike, and it was a very long and grueling 9 months, and a lot of people suffered. And there have definitely been ripple effects felt throughout the business post-strike. Some of it is timing, some of it is economics. So where do you feel in your kind of global vision of the business that we are kind of because of the strikes?
I'm going to give you an unpopular opinion. I don't think where we are right now is in any way a result of the strikes. I think there were massive tectonic plates rubbing up against each other that caused the strike, and we are still seeing where those tectonic plates are going to settle. one of the things that you and I talked about on that podcast constantly was that the argument was not really between the writers and the companies. The argument between the writers and the companies was very simple to solve and got solved in a very simple way. The real issue was between the legacy media companies and the tech media companies. And it took them 3 months just to have a conversation with each other about what they wanted. Once they had that conversation and sort of mutually began a fundamental understanding of the problems, the Writers Guild stuff was resolved pretty quickly. And then as it moved on to SAG, again, it was the fissure between the legacy media companies and the tech media companies, which are not in the same business. And once they decided to work together on that one, that got resolved pretty quickly. I think we are still in the midst of a giant shakeout of those issues. And I have given up prognosticating. My personal belief is that ultimately we are heading back towards a model, again, just my belief. Amazon, Apple, and Netflix get out of the movie business and just go back to the core, which was streaming, which creates a vacuum into which traditional media companies can step and just push movies ahead. And once that happens, where the people who are making movies need those movies to succeed in order for the companies to exist, the movie business comes back. That's my personal belief.
I'm not prognosticating that. I'm praying for that. And when people say, oh, the business is this, the business is that, and then they say, oh, the business isn't like it used to be. And I say, well, how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go all the way back where it was just a movie studio made movies? That's all they did. And that was their core business. I mean, not even core business. That was their business. They made a number of films, whichever number that was, depending on their economics. They lived and died by those number of movies. And guess what? The business grew into what it is today, and it continued to grow. And I can remember a time when I started that was the case. You know, Gulf and Western bought Paramount, and then slowly people started to buy these up. But back in the day, these chairmen and presidents and executives made movies with producers. Everybody had beach houses. Everybody had jet. I mean, it seemed like a good business. It seemed like you could make money. And I think you're right. I think what happened was the consolidation of, hey, what if we owned ABC? Hey, what if we owned CBS? Hey, what if we owned NBC? Wouldn't that be great? Then we'd be able to do this and consolidate and economies of scale. But then I think the real tipping point is, you're right. Once you could make $1 billion with 12 people at Instagram, all the CEOs in traditional media were like, well, why aren't we in that business? Let's just do that. Let's just take these movies and make them tech. And if we could get back to single companies just doing that, and you were happy with that amount of margin, it's a good business. It's not the billions and billions of tech, but I think it's a good business.
I think that's where it has to go. I think that, as we discussed during the strike, that ultimately the most successful TV model ever was basic cable, where you had the revenue streams of both ads and subscribers. That ultimately that's where streaming had to go. Streaming is very clearly on its way there, if not already there. And I think once that happens, once everybody realizes, okay, this is what you make if you're a streamer, right? And you've already seen there was that period of time when everybody was chasing Game of Thrones and thinking, okay, we've got to spend $20 million on an episode, or it's not a procedural. That's sort of gone away. But now there's this more egalitarian nature of programming at the streamers. And it's not that there's less of it. It's just costing a little bit less. Once that business settles and everybody realizes that's what streaming looks like, I think it's going to be hard for Netflix to say, no, we got to put $1 zillion into features too. I just don't think as a business that makes sense for them personally. And so I think it will settle to where it needs to be. That's my personal belief. What happens to broadcast in all of this? I don't know. You know, you keep hearing stories about how Abbott Elementary makes a fortune, or you know, the Chicago Night makes a fortune. I'm sure that's true. So as long as that is still a possibility in broadcast will continue to exist.
Practically, what have you seen that's changed since the strike in your world, both in the motion picture side and in the television side? For example, have writer rooms gotten bigger? Have there been more sales that your brethren have felt? Is there feeling like, because of what Warner Brothers did and Mike and Pam did this last year, that there's more hope for originals? Is any of this post strike feeling different, either optimistically or pessimistically, the things you were necessarily fighting for?
It's weird. Writers are, by their nature, pessimistic. I am not. I am very much hopeful, not just about the business, but to show you whether or not you should believe me. I believe our democracy can be saved too. So I might be too optimistic. I might be Pollyanna-ish, although I believe that more fervently than anything. But again, I think we are conflating the effect of the strike with trends that were happening anyway. That in some ways were accelerated by the strike, but in some ways were slowed by the strike. What you're seeing again is these gigantic tectonic rafts that are moving in the direction that business takes them in. And in general, I believe it's all a result of what we talked about on the show, which is that capitalism without guardrails can devour itself. And that's, I think, what we're seeing in the big picture right now is each of these companies is now saying, okay, what do I have to do to meet my quarterly earnings forecast? What do I have to do to not get fired as a CEO? And so you might see some version of Universal in the short term saying, oh, we'll just do what Disney did. We'll take old movies and we'll animate them. And let's just see how that goes. It's a safe bet. It's IP, et cetera, et cetera. You might see that, right? We might wake up one day and there's an American Tail with a real mouse. I don't know. Do I see a lot of boldness out there in the feature world? Not at this moment. But I actually think that the work that producers did to get the California tax credit is going to be significant. I think it's making everybody feel a little bit better about what's going to be happening in the immediate environment. And that's significant. And I am extremely hopeful about Paramount. I know those Skydance people really well and have worked closely with them and continue to do so. They are movie people. And they are there to make Paramount the great mountain that it once was. They're extremely cognizant of the fact that that studio made The Godfather and Chinatown and Fatal Attraction. And I think they want to turn it back into that. And if they do, and I believe they will, if they do, and that model is successful, it will encourage, I think, more boldness from other studios.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping also with the success of Mike and Pam this year, that other executives, just even if they have egos and they're competitive, that they'd want to jump in. And there's a lot of talk, moving on to the second topic, there's a lot of talk about the economics of the business. That just the economics are just not the way they were. Again, I want to go back to before home video. Let's just be fair, because they say, oh, because home video isn't what it was. Well, you know why it isn't what it was? Because all of you sold home video to Netflix. Like, you gave up your blockbuster rentals to Netflix. So okay, but here we are. So pre-home video, I old enough to know what the business was like pre-home video, where you had to just, again, you had to make money on your movies. Your downstream revenues had revenues. There was, free TV, there was cable TV, and then you had your library value. So I go back to it, and it's great that you're mentioning Paramount and David Ellison, because and then we'll get into consolidation in a minute. But talking about just the economics of the business, what are people saying to you? Because I know the rank and file are getting the same answers, right? Sorry, business is terrible. There's no box office anymore. And it's hard to even know if it's like the chicken or the egg. Like, are they making the wrong things and that's why the box office isn't there, or is the box office just not there and they're making things that should work that aren't? That's debatable, because some stuff that they make does gangbusters, and some stuff you think, oh, that might work, doesn't. So I don't know that there's any sort of hard and fast rule you can say, oh, comedies don't work, romantic comedies don't work. Actually, whatever it is, take chances, try to learn what your audience wants, try to give the audience what it wants, and that's the way it always used to be. How are you feeling at a real high level? How is the economics affecting you and kind of your rank and file of people of your level?
I think studios on both the feature and TV side feel like they're taking fewer shots now. And so they want to be with people that they trust. I understand that. But when you talk about what you were just talking about comedies don't work, Ashton's comedies don't work. Oh, no, they do. Okay. Let's remember that this is a business that resists to its core any sort of quantifiable study. Okay? You cannot apply the rules that you would apply to a lamp to a movie. You just can't. There's no such thing as knowing what the audience will want 2 years from now. That doesn't exist. It never existed, ever. We were always kidding ourselves when we thought we knew what was coming down the road. It's really simple. Either the movie's good or it's fucking not. Mm-hmm. Okay? And if it's good, people figure out a way to go see it. One way or another, they go see it. Okay? And if it's not, they don't come. And that's the risk of the business. There's no such thing as an execution-proof movie. Right? Point me to $1 billion movie that sucks. They just don't exist.
Right.
Right? Now, there are some movies that you gotta figure will turn people out, and then people may figure out that they're not very good. And that will hurt them, in the second weekend and the third weekend and so forth. But this idea that you can take risk out of movie making is just insane. The founding fathers of our business, Mayer and Goldwyn and Zucker and Laemmle and Zanuck and Fox and, the Warner brothers, all of them, they were gunslingers. They were risking money, sometimes on every picture. But that's how you know how old someone is, if they still refer to a movie as a picture.
Before there were billion-dollar movies, there were a lot of really good movies that could find an audience and would make money. And you knew, this is the audience, this is about the range that we think the box office is going to be. Let's back into a budget that's responsible, where we feel like there's some risk, but it's not that we'll lose sleep over it too much. With the advent of the billion-dollar grossing pictures that are like commonplace now, mostly in the superhero genre, everybody seems to be like, that's the risk they're willing to tolerate. Like, going for the billion-dollar gross.
Oh, yeah. Look, any writer will tell you, and any producer knows, it is so much easier to get a studio to spend $200 million than to get them to spend $20 million.
Yep.
It's not close. They're almost afraid to spend less than $200 million, and that's insane. That is insane. And I don't want to sound like the old man on the mountain. I'm not taking us back to Casablanca. I'm just saying, I don't know that I could get Captain Phillips made today.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's not that fucking long ago.
Right.
Forgetting, Irwin Winkler, mortgaging his house to back up the cost of Rocky.
Yeah.
Like, again, movie making involves risk. I wouldn't want to make a movie with someone who didn't understand that. And the biggest crime of the tech companies is that they convinced everyone that movie making should not involve risk. And from Apple's point of view, it doesn't, right? You want to go and spend $200 million on a Napoleon movie if you're Apple? Okay, great. There's no risk. There's no risk. The problem is that Universal and Paramount and Warner's and Disney look at that and they say, oh, we don't want to risk either.
Right.
And so they make movies that sound risk free. And the problem is that's getting really predictable. And I would argue that if your entire slate is dependent upon blockbusters and IP, you're not going to have any movies to make 5 years from now because you have to make new ideas to generate IP.
We just moved my movie, Mortal Kombat 2, from October to May because there's no movies in the summer, but there really are also no movies in the fall. So if there was a company that would back up and say, okay, I'm gonna listen to Billy Ray and spread the risk across and make more responsible choices, you'd have weekends to yourself. You could create a really profitable business. Could you make $1 billion on a movie? No, probably not. If you're spending 20 to 50 million dollars, where people keep saying the middle is gone. But if you could figure out a way to get creative people to write those movies again, more personal movies, more things that would have their own stamp of approval, that's not really yours. If you could write a Captain Phillips, that's quintessentially Billy Ray. As a writer, I would think, man, there's this studio that really wants to. I'm going to take some shots like Weapons. I'm going to take some shots with this studio and spread it across the 12 months of the year. Find weekends that could work, be really nimble, and be a hustler. You could make a really good business out of that. I just think that these huge corporations don't think that that's sexy because they would rather make $1 billion on Beauty and the Beast, and that feels safer. And then there's a downstream, and because you're swinging for such high grosses and such high margins, it kind of cuts everything out of the middle. So it's like, again, it's that chicken and the egg thing. Is that's what's doing it, or did the middle drop and then they did it? I think it's the other way around.
I do too, and I would also argue that Beauty and the Beast exists because in 1992, Disney made an original idea called Beauty and the Beast, the first animated movie ever to be nominated for Best Picture.
I was at the studio then.
That had no IP. They just said, "Oh, here's a great idea. We're going to animate it. We're going to get a brilliant score, and off we go." And look at the risk they took. I don't know what that movie cost back in 1992. I'm sure it was substantial, right? But look at the sequels. Look at the video sales. Look at the theatrical stage production. Look at the live action version. Look at the rides. How much money came out of that one idea? Right? If you don't develop new material, you will have no bench to draw from. And then we're going to do what? Make a 10th Spider-Man? Like, really? That's what we're offering the audience now? And I'm not shitting on Spider-Man. I mean, it started with Alvin Sargent. It was amazing, right? But if the House of Gucci debuted its fall line in 2 weeks, and it was the exact same stuff as their spring line, and they just said, we just didn't have any new ideas. Sorry, you got to buy this again. Well, eventually House of Gucci wouldn't be House of Gucci, right? You've got to take some swings. That's the nature of the game. But fortune smiles upon the brave, at least in this business. And I agree with you completely. And I would also add, I don't know a writer, not one, who, if given a chance to make a character-driven personal movie, would say, no, you're not paying me enough. Not one.
Right.
All of them would take that shot. Because, some of them fantasize about beach houses, although I guess beach houses aren't a thing anymore. They all
They literally aren't.
So they don't exist anymore. So now you don't have to worry about spending your money on a beach house. What we really got into this for was because we wanted to make Cuckoo's Nest. We wanted to make Kramer versus Kramer. We wanted to make Schindler. We wanted to make movies that mattered. Even if, by the way, the movies that matter to you are comedies or action movies or whatever. What we didn't want to become was cogs in a machine.
Yeah. Day laborers working for a corporation. Well, that brings us to consolidation. So we were talking about Ellison, and now there's this, probably more than a rumor, that they may buy Warner Brothers. And there's all kinds of mixed bag feelings about this. that this is a play to get Warner Brothers to combine it and make even less movies. Here's the thing I will say about consolidation, and let's say Ellison does buy Warner Brothers, and let's say they do the worst thing ever. They just combine the two studios and they're going to make less. What you and I are saying, which is probably more for the solution part of this conversation, but there's real opportunity there. Let's just say if the worst does happen, and you're right, streamers get out of theatrical completely. So Amazon doesn't even try anymore, and Apple doesn't care. And then, and Netflix is never going to do it. And then Warner's and Paramount merge, and they're going to make less movies. This is an opportunity for people to come in and figure out how to take advantage of the fact that we're not making as many movies. And like you said, if you can make stuff that is appealing to people and kind of the way we used to look at movies and find that audience, there's a real business there. And the other thing that people say all the time, which is such a weird argument, is like, oh, kids today they can only focus for 30 seconds, right?
Oh, shit.
Well, then explain to me then why Jason Bateman is doing these amazing TV series and Mark Ruffalo are doing these amazing long hours and hours and hours, and Seth Rogen is doing long, I mean, like multiple episodes that people are binging for 8 to 10 hours. That doesn't make sense to me. If that was the case, then you would say, these really, really talented people should be doing 5-minute shorts, right? But they're not. They're doing 8 to 10 hour stories to tell really long, complex, interesting stories in every genre, in comedy and thriller, and that's the only place where historical drama is even a thing now. So I don't believe that. I do believe people are distracted by TikTok, but you can pull them away if you tell, like you said, tell good, compelling stories that are personal to you that you can find an audience for. So where do you come out in this whole consolidation argument?
Well, let me answer the last thing you said first. In terms of what appeals to young people. When I say young people, I'm going to say 24 to 16. Everything that you and I grew up accepting as bedrock, they don't believe. Okay? In terms of their faith in institutions, we accepted as an article of faith, if you go to college, you are set for life. Okay? This generation does not believe that to be true. Okay? We, at least I, grew up believing America is just superior to the rest of the world ethically, morally, spiritually, militarily. This generation does not believe that either. And in my household, we were taught that the Democratic Party was a thing of total purity that looked out for the American worker and tried to lead that worker into the middle class. No one in the generation coming up behind us believes that either. Okay? So those are three fundamental beliefs that they don't share, right? And on top of it, we were taught that movies are the place that you go escape to. That there's nothing close to the experience of a movie. I waited in line to see The Sting in 1973. It was the first blockbuster line I ever waited in. But I did it many times as a kid. I waited in line to see Jaws. I waited in line to see Saturday Night Fever again and again and again. Every time a James Bond movie came out, I waited in line. Or when Manhattan came out, I waited in line. This generation has no concept of that at all. As this generation was coming of age, they were exposed to COVID, which shut them all down emotionally, right? And we were seeing all kinds of developmental hitches in all of those kids. There are mental health issues that are, profound. And they're now seeing an age of Trump, which is making their world seem a lot less free. And AI, which is scaring the living crap out of them, okay? So, do I believe that has made them retreat and hide in their phone? Yes. But I also believe that they all know the phone is not the answer. They all know it. They all know they need to take TikTok breaks and X breaks and whatever breaks. They all know that. And if we make movies that feel true to them, they'll go. Mm-hmm. Of course they'll go.
Oh, and I will add to that also, Letterbox. They love Letterbox because it's a social thing. They can talk about movies, things they like, their own opinion, what they feel about it, suggest things to their friends. So if you can find something that, feels authentic, and I'm not even saying trying to swing and try to figure them out and game the system the way tech continues to try to algorithmically game the system. Like you said, you make The Sting, and for this generation, they go, "Whoa, what is that?" They'll letterbox it. They'll talk about it on TikTok. I just did this. I'm doing 13 going on 30 live music theatrical musical. It's a tiny theater in Manchester, England, and it became this TikTok sensation. My daughter Kim goes, "You're trending on TikTok." This little part of the song, the kids just figured out and they're sharing it. If you can, and that movie was very authentic to me. I made that movie when I was a young executive, and the people who are doing this care about it and they're really nurturing it. It's resonating with that generation. So I agree with you also. Like they want to take a break and say, "Hey, go see this. This is something that's gonna make you feel a certain way. Go, it's gonna scare you. It's gonna move you." And they're rating these things, forgetting. I think they look at that more than they look at Rotten Tomatoes, quite frankly, because I think they're starting to figure out the Rotten Tomatoes system can be gamed, and also doesn't feel authentic to them necessarily.
I just showed Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid to a 24-year-old colleague. His head came off his shoulders. Yeah. You freak out. Okay? Anybody of any age who sees that movie for the first time is going to say, "What is that?" Like, it's just better than everything else. And there are lots of examples of that. Show a 24-year-old kid Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah.
Show them Reds.
Yeah.
Show them The Graduate. Watch what happens.
Yeah.
Believe me, they're not checking their phones.
Yeah, my daughter's a massive Cameron Crowe fan. Like, she found him and she's now watched all his movies and just loves the detail of it. She's relating to Fast Times and Almost Famous, but that's not her generation at all. But she completely sees the authenticness in it and all the emotion of it and loves it and has told all her friends, "You've got to watch this."
If Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid did not exist, okay, and you made that movie today with Brad Pitt and fill in the blanks, I don't know, Christian Bale, Matt Damon, whoever, okay, you made that movie might make $1 billion.
Yeah.
If you just took movie stars, put them in movie star parts where they're not winking at the camera, where they're playing it straight, that movie would be massively successful. Go back. You want to like do some studying? Go watch Towering Inferno.
Right.
Okay? Watch how seriously Paul Newman and Steve McQueen are playing their parts in that movie. Like, you believe Paul Newman's an architect and Steve McQueen is the fire chief and they're, having a hassle with each other. You totally buy Faye Dunaway coming through that movie. You totally buy William Holden. They're all in that fucking... Red Buttons is walking through that movie. O.J. Simpson's carrying a cat for half the movie. And they're playing it so straight. And the problem is now, if you put movie stars in that movie, in order to seem cool, they'd wink at the camera to let you know, "Hey, I know I'm not a fire chief. I'm not taking it this seriously. We're going to wink about who I really am," right? Which is the death of movies. You're going there to see someone pretend to be a fire chief. And Steve McQueen totally bought in. And it's not like that guy was a sellout. He wasn't at all. He took that job and said, "Okay, I'm now a fire chief. And I'm going to play it like one." And he does. There's my favorite moment in the movie. There's a scene towards the end of the movie. You pan along a bunch of rescuers sitting on the floor of that skyscraper, completely exhausted. And there's McQueen, and he's sitting there, and he's just staring, like that Marine 5,000 mile stare. He's just beat. He doesn't know what the hell to do next. And then they say, "We got a new problem," and he's got to and deal with it. Like, if you do that in a non-cheesy way, of course people will come.
That's like why Die Hard was such a groundbreaking, genre-busting, created its own, verbiage, Die Hard Inna, because you just believed he was John McClane. You weren't seeing Bruce Willis, the big movie star. You were just seeing an actor being John McClane. Now go to Consolidation, because we could talk about old movies and we're going to get here for 4 hours. But let's talk about Consolidation.
Again, Die Hard was an original idea.
Yeah.
At one point, someone had to suck it up and take a risk and say, we're making a movie that has no IP. Because in 1988, IP didn't exist. It wasn't even a phrase yet. Okay? And I would also remind you that Bruce Willis was coming off two failures, two Blake Edwards movies that didn't work. The first was Blind Date, and the second was Sunset with James Garner. People forget that one. And Fox said to Bruce Willis, okay, do you want to be in Die Hard? And he said, I want $5 million. And they choked on it and then paid it, right? It's not like there was no risk on that movie. There was a giant risk on that movie. But look what it yielded. How many Die Hards have there been? 6?
Yep.
I don't know. It changed everybody's career. Everybody who came near that movie. All those boats rose. Okay, Consolidation. Let me just start by saying I am not without bias in this on both sides. I love my guild and I've spent a lot of time trying to protect it. And I really love David Ellison and really believe in him as a person. If the goal is to combine two studios and put a bunch of people out of work and make less movies, my hope is he doesn't do that. That's my hope. Okay? But I can't look inside David Ellison's soul and know what it is he's trying to achieve. And I've never asked him. I don't want to step outside and judge it because I know he's a movie guy and I know the people around him are movie people. And it's hard for me to believe that he would do something knowingly that would hurt the business. I don't think that's who that person is. I don't. That said, if that is the result, we know what consolidation does. Consolidation, as a rule, is bad for writers and bad for producers and bad for everybody because it means less movies and it means less people in the movie making community. I'm going to withhold judgment to see if it actually happens. And then if it does happen, I'm going to withhold judgment to see what the knock-on effect is. But in general, I like all writers, I have a suspicion about it.
I find also in this consolidation argument, as you were saying, that a lot of executives, creative executives, they talk about the business in such a way that it sounds like it's a top-down conversation that maybe even a little bit led by the game of telephone, because they're just saying as fact, like, well, you know what, we're only going to make 15 movies. Oh, we're only going to make 12 movies. I feel like I hear these things and it feels like the board had a conversation with somebody and then he told the chairman and the chairman told the president and the president told the EVP and the EVP comes in a big staff meeting and repeats it to all the other executives that go out into the town and kind of say what the mandate is. And it all sounds the same. It all sounds like the same earnings call that Netflix is having is the same kind of conversation that Amazon is having. And then the same earnings call that Warner's having feels like and it just feels like these creative executives sort of get these blinders on of like, listen, we're not making these kind of movies. We're only doing this and we got to make these things and we're only making 11. And it doesn't feel like when I was a co-president or even a president of production and doing it, it's like we were gunning to just make movies. Like, how many good scripts could we find and how many good actors and directors could we put in those scripts to make good movies and then figure out what the best release date for those was. It feels like it's totally upside down now. Like, well, our overlords are saying we're only making these kind of movies, so this is what we're going to do. And then they're missing out on all kinds of other things and passing on things just because they're just sort of sticking to their mandate. And so as the consolidation conversation starts, I'd heard several different execs, literally those studios, other studios saying, well, Paramount was going to make 8, now it's going to make 15, but they can't really make 15. And like Warner's was making 15, but they're only going to make 12. And it's like, How do you know that? Like, who? You're not the person making that decision. There's a board somewhere and what are they aiming for? Numbers or budget? Are they going to make 18 $300 million movies? All the things you're saying don't really add up to kind of the reality of what the movie business is. Are you finding that even on your side, like as a writer and as a truly creative person? Like, are people just saying, Billy, don't bring me that. Don't bring me anything that you're passionate about because we're only going to make 11 movies. And then probably if we consolidate, we're only going to get to make 9, you know?
That started 20 years ago. I remember having a conversation at the Beverly Hills Basketball League when my daughter was 8. Okay. She's now 29. And I was sitting there talking to a studio president. And 20 years ago. And I said, what are you guys doing? And 20 years ago, he said, well, we'll make anything with Will Smith. And we'll make a comedy if the price is right. And that's basically it. And I said, well, don't you think that that might limit the range of creativity from the community on which you draw? And he said, well, we really don't. And I knew we were in for some pretty tough sledding. That was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's even worse. And what I would suggest, and I recognize that this makes me hopelessly old-fashioned, but don't think about the 18 movies. Just think about one. Script that got handed to you that's either been developed or it's a spec or it was a pitch or it's whatever. Is that a good movie? Can that be a good movie if you get it right? Yeah, if you cast it badly, it's going to suck. Yeah, wrong director, tank. But if you do it right, can that be a good movie? Then go make the fucking movie and then evaluate the next one. Like, I don't understand this idea of 11, magic number. Again, it's this idea that you can make a movie the way you would make a clock. Movies aren't clocks. They're just not. And sometimes you have to embrace that magic is required for them to work. And that's the nature of the game. If you don't like it, get in another game.
I said this to a really good friend of mine who was running a movie studio. And I said, when was the last time one of your execs stood on the desk and said, we have to make this movie? And this person said, not once. What are you talking about? And I said, my boss, Joe Roth, was probably the biggest movie lover I've ever worked for. He just wanted to make stuff. And I stood on the desk 3 times a year, like even with him who wanted to say yes. I was like, we have to make this. Not once, this person said. So it's like, that's terrifying.
All right, so the weekend that Phil Robinson's script for Field of Dreams came into Universal, every man on that development team walked in to that Monday morning meeting and said, we must make this. And most of the women in the room didn't get it. And I understand why, but the men in that particular case were right. And they made this movie and everybody went to go see it, and it's now much beloved and thought of rightly as one of the 100 greatest screenplays ever written. And it was just about passion, right? Getting that movie made was about a group of people saying, no, we have to fucking make this. By the way, in the 70s, there were executives at ABC who walked into Barry Diller's office with William Blynn's script for the first episode of Roots and said, we need to make this. And Barry Diller said, okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's how it happened. It wasn't a version of what's happening right now, which is, December of 2029, I want a Slinky movie. What do we have to do working backwards from December of 2029 to get my fucking Slinky movie right on screens? That's the way it's happening right now. And I think there's a drone quality to it.
Think about how easy it would be to pass on Field of Dreams right now.
Oh, the film
And I'm
didn't do
gonna
that.
and I'm gonna lead you to the AI because it's coming up. But like, if you ran that thing through AI coverage, which I guarantee you everybody is doing, it's like a baseball movie, it's a ghost movie, it's a time travel movie, sort of, and it sort of ends with like a game of catch. Like, what the fuck is this thing? Pass. There's no merch. What the fuck?
What
Pass.
was the movie Kevin Costner was in right before it? Another fucking baseball movie.
Right,
Like,
right,
no way are
right,
they making that today. No
right,
way. Okay?
right.
And those are two of my favorite movies of all time.
Me too. Yeah.
Like, Bull Durham, you just turn on because it's just the most enjoyable movie in the world.
Yeah.
It's fucking
But there is
fantastic.
no executive that's going to read that screenplay and run into their boss's office and say, "We have to make this," because the algorithm makes no fucking sense to the algorithm. Even back then, it didn't make any
But
sense to
here's
the
what I would
algorithm.
argue, which is the part that they're not getting. Forgive me, but the part they're not getting. Pre-COVID, 70% of the audience that saw movies didn't decide on what movie they were going to see until they got to the theater. 70%. Who were just saying, we're going to the movies. And then they got there and they looked at the big board with 12 screens and said, oh, yeah, that one starts at the right time. Let's go see that one. Okay? Now that has totally flipped. Now, 70% of the audience goes to the theater to see a specific movie. They're not going to the movies. They're going to see a movie. Okay? If that is true, then every movie must be necessary in one way or another. And that doesn't mean every movie must be big. Not every movie must be big, but every movie must be necessary. And the way I define necessary is either it's an epic piece of entertainment, right? Or it's a movie that you've just heard is amazing, or it's a star doing a movie star part that you're dying to see. It's not like Oppenheimer was one of those stories that everybody in America said, oh, if they make an Oppenheimer movie, I'll definitely go see that. Like nobody was thinking about it, but the second you saw the trailer for it, you thought, oh, that's a necessary movie. Wow, that's something I need to know more about. Made by a really serious filmmaker. That necessitates the viewing of that movie. And if you try to make movies like widgets, knowing that 70% of the audience now is coming to see one movie, any movie, then they're not going to come. No one's gonna make plans to go see a widget.
When I was doing the job, there was a slate, and the slate was laid out by month and week. And very quickly, I'll just, January had like usually a sports movie in it or something like that was culturally relevant. February usually had a rom-com around Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, kind of, female-driven movie. You got into March, you had your R-rated comedies that were because kids were out in spring break. Then you got Easter, you started getting those family movies. Then you got into May, was a tent pole that you really didn't believe was big enough. You were launching a tent pole. You didn't feel like it was big enough to be in the choppy waters of July and June, July. June, July, you had your big tent poles, and then you would counter program those tent poles. August always had the Paramount thriller, the Fugitive, or any of the Ashley Judd
Or the
thrillers.
subgenre, the Ashley Judd in Trouble movie.
I said Ashley Judd, yeah, the Ashley Judd Paramount movies, exactly. Then you got into September, you started getting that fall, yummy feeling, you're starting to get your rewards movies and the dramas. And then you get into your awards contenders, then you got into your scary movies, then you got into your family movies, then you got into your Christmas movies, which also had rom-coms, and all the thing reset. Because what it did was it not only showed you as an executive, oh shit, I need an R-rated comedy for March, but not to say you need to make that many movies, but what it also did, which has been taken away, it taught the audience when to expect certain things, right? Like, oh, it's March, an R-rated comedy. I feel it. You didn't even know why. We've taken that away. Now an R-rated comedy just goes, well, first let's go to streaming, but like now a movie comes and goes, let's see, where is there not a Marvel movie? Okay, nope, there's a game there. Okay, boom. It maybe doesn't fit in that weekend. It's maybe not be the right weekend for that kind of movie. People aren't in the mood for a football movie in January. Like, it's Super Bowl. They have enough football, or maybe they are. But like, you have to figure out you have to teach the audience, like, hey, get ready. This kind of movie is coming, and then you get excited and you go to the movies and you see that kind of movie. We've eradicated that. There's no slate. The slate is, how can we make $1 billion on every movie, and how can it be have merch and everything else? How can I have consumer products? And I miss that. I miss it as a moviegoer, like, oh, I know that this is coming. I'm going to get to see this kind of movie. That doesn't exist anymore. And in streaming, it's even more ubiquitous. It's like, who knows when things are coming out? It's just sort of like, when is it? It's on Thursday. It's coming out, October 10th. Why? And so I feel like we've taken that away from the audience as well.
I agree. All right, we better talk about AI.
Okay. AI, which I think is on everybody's minds, is the tsunami that's coming. I feel like there's two sides. One side is the creative community that's like, oh crap, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. Humans can't be replaced. This is disgusting. It's awful. It looks crazy. It's terrible. Then the other side is, oh, good. I can make a movie from my basement and finally break into Hollywood without any barriers. Screw them. I'm going to make Peter Griffin be in The Fugitive. Ha ha ha. Right? Those are the two sides I see. And it does feel like what you're saying, even in politics and everything, it's like, it's so divided of like, fuck you, Hollywood, and oh shit, they're coming for us. Where do you come down on AI?
Okay, so again, taking the second part first. Once iPhones existed, the egalitarian nature of storytelling changed. Because literally anybody could go make a movie, edit it, and put it together, and then distribute it. Literally, they could just dump it onto YouTube, and if it caught fire, it caught fire. Hard to do, really hard to do. But anybody could do it. And I'm all for it. And if AI is going to be a tool in the toolbox of that 15-year-old burgeoning filmmaker, fine. I'm fine with it. Okay? And if somehow that filmmaker can make AI make a movie that's better than the movies we're all making, then that person deserves to have their place at the table. And it would be wrong to take that away from them. That's one side of the argument. Now let's talk about the Hollywood side of the argument. I, by habit, talk about, as I did earlier in this podcast, capitalism without guardrails. A movie studio owned by a larger parent corporation is a product of pure capitalistic intent, okay? And pure capitalism is a voracious animal. It knows nothing but profit. It cares for nothing but profit, all right? And we've seen that expressed in a million different ways. And it's why the Writers Guild was on strike in 2007. That was straight up corporate greed that just had to be beaten back. The writers were 100% in the right. We saw it again in 2023 with both the writers and the actors, where it was straight up corporate greed and the writers and the actors were completely in the right. There's no debate about that. We were trying to apply some sort of guardrails to the naked capitalistic urges of those companies. Seeing that as context, AI as a tool doesn't scare me. AI as a weapon in the hands of crazed studios scares me to death. Because if their goal is to suppress costs as a means of boosting profits, well, they're going to look at AI and say, oh, I don't have to hire anybody.
Right.
Like, we're getting to the place where a movie can be made in silico. Mm-hmm. Like, the whole thing can be made on a chip. And that means you got to have someone write it. So someone's going to get paid something to write it. But everyone else, kind of gone. Mm-hmm. There's no production designer. There's no DP. There's no art director. There are no costumes. There's no makeup. There's no hair. There's no greens. There's no sound. There's no nothing. There's either that 15-year-old kid on his or her couch, right? Or there's somebody in an office at Universal who's just been given unlimited bandwidth in a computer in order to make a movie, right? To tell a story in which you have fake actors, fake faces, fake everything. If that ever works, God help us. It will be the end of the business. End. Not just the end of the guilds. Of course it will be the end of the guilds because they won't have to hire anybody, and therefore goodbye pension, goodbye health, goodbye guilds. Forgetting. It's the end of IATSE. It's the end of everything. It's the end of the Teamsters. It's the end of a middle class income for hundreds of thousands of people and everybody that counts on them for income, right? You know, the cliche about the dry cleaners and the waitress and the dog walker and the babysitter, and you know, they're all done. You're done. And by the way, so is the orthodontist, and so is the dermatologist, and all of it. It's you won't have money to spend on anything because you won't be making any money. Okay, so long-winded setup. My belief from the start was that at the bottom of every feature made, there's a seal that says this: no animals were harmed in the making of this motion picture. The ASPCA is the arbiter of that seal. So I went to my guild. I mean, I'm in two, but I went to the Writers Guild, and I said, why don't we have that seal at the bottom of every movie? A Writers Guild seal saying AI did not write this movie. If that seal were part of our deal with the AMPTS, if that was one of our demands in a pattern of demands in the next negotiation, then what you would have is a certain consumer protection.
Right.
Meaning that at the end of that movie, at the end of every movie, the audience gets used to seeing that seal, and if that seal is not there, critics write about it, journalists write about it, and they say to a studio, why was there no seal? Who wrote this movie? Right? And the studios say, well, we didn't earn the seal because the Writers Guild determines who gets the seal, and fuck, AI wrote this movie. And that's part of the story of that movie. And I think that would hurt box office, and therefore, I believe the studios would want that seal on every movie. So with a few other concerned colleagues, I went to an AI guy who has developed software for universities to flag the use of AI in term papers. Can this be applied to screenplays? Yes. Then I went to the head of Final Draft. I said, you're putting AI as a tool in your programming. Can you work with this guy and create software that will flag if AI was used so that the Writers Guild could know if a product, if a screenplay had been written by AI? Final Draft said, great. So I went to the Guild. I said, here you go. And the Guild at first was resistant because they didn't want to be seen as endorsing a product, in this case, Final Draft. And I said to the person I was dealing with at the Guild, you know, I've gone to 100 lunches at the Guild, and they're always catered by Jones on Third. And when I see sandwiches with a Jones on Third wrapper, I don't take it as an endorsement. I take it to mean that the Writers Guild doesn't fucking make sandwiches.
Right.
Okay, well, you don't do this either, so you're going to have to farm it out to somebody. And that's not an endorsement. It's a lifeline. And the Writers Guild happily agreed. And so a pilot program began, and the pilot program worked. And so if the Writers Guild develops this technology where the Writers Guild can determine who gets that seal and who doesn't, and then if they can convince the studios, as they should, that studios should want that seal, then the Directors Guild asks for it. Then SAG asks for it, right? Then IATSE asks for it, then etc. So each of these concerned guilds says, hey, our members did this. They have their seal. Well, then you have quality control. And then AI doesn't scare me at all.
Yeah, and also it just feels like what you were saying about one person in a room with unlimited bandwidth. Okay, but if they're not talented, right? You could put somebody who's just adequately talented in a room with AI with all the bells and whistles. It's not going to make Avatar, right? It's not going to
It's
make
not.
Schindler's List. It's not going to make the first Spider-Man. It's going to go for the lowest common denominator, and it doesn't matter how much that cost. If it just feels like it's a retread of a retread of a retread and sort of feels kind of like been there, done that, which is all really AI can do, then I don't know that the audience is even going to want it. I mean,
No, they're
forget
not going
even
to want it. I agree. I'm telling you, the fear is if somebody gets it right,
right.
then we got an issue. I don't believe it's possible, personally. But again, imagine a world in which each guild affixes their seal to a movie to say, yes, one of our members performed this task on this movie, not AI.
Right.
Then all of that is being determined by the creative community, not by the execs. And therefore, it is being driven by artistic integrity, not a blind, mad dash for profit. And then I think we're all safe.
Well, see, this is why you're so incredible at this, is because you put your money where your mouth is and you go and you do these things. So let's talk about, we've talked about these 5 things and why they're a problem and why they are challenging. There's going to be executives listening to this, agents listening to this, managers, producers, writers, so on down the line. What can each of us do, not just with AI, but to help turn this around? Because where we're headed, because all I hear is we're just headed off the cliff, but it's of our own making. We're buying the scripts, we're writing the scripts, we're making the movies that aren't lighting fires in the box office, and we keep just sort of doing the same thing, wondering why it isn't working, and then kind of trying to come up with theories after the fact, like, well, I guess originals don't work, and then Mike and Pam go on this huge run. Well, I guess originals work, and then a big, huge piece of IP fails. Well, maybe there's superhero fatigue, and we're always trying to come up with theories about why stuff in the past didn't work. But going forward, for all of us listening to this right now, what do you get up in the morning and try to do? And what can we all try to do as producers and creatives in the community to try to make things better?
Thanks for the kind words. I really appreciate it. I spent a lot of time in the political space, as you know,
Yep.
and I am astonished by the number of Democrats who have already completely surrendered to the idea elections aren't going to matter. They're not going to happen. They're not going to count. Who cares what happens in 2026? Trump won't count those elections. Okay? And they've already sort of surrendered to that. That is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't believe it to be true for a second. I've spoken to a lot of people in the political space who are involved with election integrity. Elections are run by states, and the states are not going to be cowed by the Trump White House. Of course, elections will matter if we all do our part, right? If we stop thinking of it as an inevitability, which is stunning that we've adopted that so quickly, and if we recognize that it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, that in fact, we need to put faith over fear, okay? When you stand up and challenge a corrupt and chaotic White House at the risk of arrest, you're putting faith over fear. When you go to bat for vets, the elderly, kids, anyone left behind by Mike Johnson and his spectacularly dishonest caucus, you're putting faith over fear, okay? We now need to do that in Hollywood as well. Mm-hmm. Anybody who shrugs their shoulders and says, that's the business, they are doing the equivalent of saying elections won't matter. Okay? Do your part. Don't behave like an asshole. Keep pushing great stories. Keep acting as if great storytelling is going to triumph. Keep bringing your best self in every meeting, on every project, every day. I tell young writers this all the time. I treat every meeting that I'm in as if it's an audition. It could be someone I've known for 25 years. I pretend it's the first time I'm meeting them and I'm here to make a first impression and what I want that first impression to be. Yeah, it takes more effort. Of course it takes more effort. but I'm trying to grab something that's deeply elusive and really valuable, which is legacy in this business. Act like it every day. If you are a studio executive, don't take that corporate answer. Don't shrug it off and say, There are moments where you do have to stand on the table and say, no, goddammit, this is one of those we have to make. And I don't care what the algorithm says. Algorithms are wrong all the time. All the time. Things that were absolutely certain 4 weeks ago are no longer true today. It's things move that fast. But greatness in storytelling isn't an evergreen. It's an eternal. It's a constant. Lean on that, right? Be the person who bucks the trend. Be the studio who does things a different way. Don't try to imitate what Silicon Valley is doing. Go back to what Cecil B. DeMille said in the 50s. Cecil B. DeMille said, when we made pictures with picture money, there was joy. When we made pictures with Wall Street money, there was despair. Okay? Hollywood is its own little bubble. It doesn't exist by the same rules as the rest of the economy. It exists on risk and huge reward. Huge reward. Embrace it or get out of the business. I remember once I was in New York 30 years ago with a real estate lady looking at apartments, okay? And I'll never forget this lady when I was talking about, well, do you think we can get that for a better price? And she said, you come to the market. The market does not come to you. Okay?
Yes.
And that's what we're all acting like now, right? Like we just have to obey by the rules.
Right.
And we don't. If you own a studio, you can make the rules. If you work at a studio, you can talk to the person who does own the studio and convince them otherwise. If you're a director, you can sign up for movies that matter to you. If you're a writer, you can keep writing the great stuff, right? And by the way, actors, you play a huge part in this. What you say yes to and what you say no to is the driver in the business. It always has been. And movie stars bear a responsibility here for what movies are getting made and what movies are not getting made. And the quality of movies is going to have a real relationship to that. So we all have to do better, all of us. And if you're asking me what motivates me is the same thing that has motivated me for 37 years. I want to win Oscars. That still matters to me. I want my name on one of the 100 greatest movies ever made. That still matters to me. Those are still mountaintops for me that are deeply, deeply meaningful. I'm not going to be a happy person until I get there. So I just got to keep outworking everybody else. But I believe that work is enough.
That thing you're talking about wanting to do great work and just, give your all. And it's more about being in the business for the love of the game and being remembered and making great stuff. And I will say this, if you're worried about being fired, and you only do what they say, you will be fired. And to take it back to the Field of Dreams analogy, if you are a pitcher and you are only worried about not throwing a ball, you will always throw a ball and you will be fired. And so if you're an executive that's only playing defense to not get fired, not only are you going to get fired, you're never going to work on a movie you're going to be remembered for. Because years from now, nobody's going to remember who worked on the fifth version of a piece of IP. Even if you were a great executive and you had a lot to contribute, they're going to remember that IP. Everybody's going to remember if you were the executive on Godfather. Everybody knows it was Bob Evans, and the guy is a legend. I can't understand wanting to do this as a job because it's hard. None of us make a lot of money. I mean, there's a few people that do. And it's really fucking hard. So if you don't want to do it just for the love of seeing someone laugh or seeing someone get scared or seeing someone cry or moving somebody, what the fuck are you doing? Don't do it. And so if you're a person, if you're a person in a corporation that's going to these meetings and you're feeling dead inside and you're only working on this IP and it doesn't resonate with you, get the fuck out, because you could probably do something better somewhere else. And the people that I love, the executives I love, the producers I love, why I love you so much is we're all doing it because we love to sit in that room with 400 people and see a reaction, period. And hopefully that there's enough of people that have that reaction that it's profitable. And that's obviously, as a producer, my North Star is I have to be an arbiter between commerce and creativity. But at the end of the day, I mean, yes, I've had huge hits that have made giant margins. It doesn't equate to seeing an entire audience react hugely at the same time. It doesn't, and it never will.
Right. And again, it's faith over fear. Okay, it's a very religious idea for a very political moment, but it applies to our business too. And I would okay. So let me close with something hugely Talmudic, and it actually is from the Talmud. It's my favorite verse in the Talmud, and I use it in political speeches all the time. But it occurs to me that it is completely true for our business too. Okay, so just adapt what was said in Scripture to our business. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Walk humbly now. Love mercy now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Right? Just do your part. Put your faith over your fear and do your best work. And that rising tide will lift all of us.
Thank you, brother. That's why I had you do this. I love you, man. And thank you. Thank you for coming back and doing this with me. I really appreciate you, brother.
It's a privilege. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Producer's Guide. If you're a fan of this podcast, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. And if you got any questions about producing, send me a DM on X at Todd_Garner. I want to thank my producer, Steve Delamater. And until next week, I'm Todd Garner. See you then.